If you've ever been to Japan, you've probably seen this figure all over the place, both at temples and graveyards, sometimes along hiking trails, and even just on the roadside. This is one of the most beloved figures in all of Japan, and in fact, it's become sort of a pop cultural figure as well. This is Jizo Bosatsu, or the bodhisattva Jizo. Let's break down the name, Jizo Bosatsu. So Jizo is two Japanese or Chinese characters, two kanji, earth and treasury or storehouse. And Bosatsu is, of course, a direct translation from the Sanskrit bodhisattva. So what is a bodhisattva? It's a concept that arose with Mahayana Buddhism. Basically, a bodhisattva is an enlightened being that has decided, or rather willed, that they will forego full liberation, full Buddhahood, until everyone else is liberated from the 6 realms of suffering. So in the original Buddhist teachings, as far as we know from history, the historical Buddha was most likely preaching about the cessation of all suffering, and his initial disciples were talking about liberating themselves from suffering and basically disappearing from this samsara, the wheel of rebirth, which was eternal suffering. But with Mahayana Buddhism, that's the main sort of division between the types is Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. They rather have this bodhisattva concept where it becomes more parallel, you might say, or Christ-like, in that it's all about compassion and saving the weakest, and they want to forego the cessation of their suffering and first rescue all other sentient beings. Jizo Bosatsu, of course, didn't originate in Japan. His Sanskrit name would be Chitigarbha, and if you've studied Sanskrit, forgive me for butchering the pronunciation there. It's spelled K-S, like a Kishitigarba or something, but I think it's pronounced Chitigarbha. Anyways, Jizo Bosatsu came to China around the mid-8th century, and then was translated into Japanese about 100 years later. He arose to prominence in the Heian period in Japan, roughly 1,000 and a little over 1,000 years ago. So Jizo was originally viewed as the one who would deliver beings from the hell worlds, from the death of the historical Gautama Buddha until the birth of the future Maitreya Buddha, which is, I believe, supposed to happen in 4 or 5 million or billion years from now, according to the traditional Indian reckoning. In case you're not familiar with the Buddhist cosmology, and perhaps you thought, Buddhism, that's rebirth, not heaven and hell, right? Well, yeah, it's all of those things. There are 6 worlds in Buddhism, and these are the hell world, the world of hungry ghosts, the animal world, and these 3 realms are the lower realms, and they're viewed as the hell realms. And then the 3 upper realms are the realm of the jealous gods, the human world, and then the heavens of the divine beings. But all of these are considered to be basically ringed in samsara, the cycle of suffering that you're trying to liberate yourself from. So even if you're a human or even a god, that's still a state you want to be liberated from. However, Jizo is specifically tasked with liberating people from those lower worlds. When I was hiking up Mount Goyo, near Kamaishi in Iwate, I came upon an area of barren, brown, rocky ground with lots of little cairns, piles of rocks stacked all over on larger boulders, and a sign marking this place out as Saino Kawara. Now, I'd never heard of a Saino Kawara at this point, but I asked a hiker that I was with and heard the beginning of the story, and since talked to many others and learned that Saino Kawara is a mythological location, sort of the banks of the river Styx, if you wanted to put it in Greek terms. And there are a number of places around Japan with that name. According to this legend of Saino Kawara, children who die young before their parents are unable to be reborn in a heavenly realm and must be judged by the 10 kings of hell for the suffering they caused their parents by dying young. That sounds kind of harsh, but yeah, there it is. And so these young children would come to this Saino Kawara, sort of the banks of the river where you cross to the other side, but be unable to cross, and they would be forced by these hell demons to stack piles of rocks into towers as a penance, and also in the hopes that when they're stacked high enough they could climb into one of the heaven realms. However, these hell demons would periodically come by and using large iron clubs smash the rocks down and also beat them with these iron clubs. Now this is where our friend Jizo Bosatsu come in. Ojizo-sama would appear, and in the long lengths of his robes, he would sometimes hide these young children and then take them off into heaven realms. In other versions of the legend, he would take them across the river himself using a staff that he carries in many of the statues to forge his way across Zee H, basically the Japanese version of the river Styx. This myth originated around the 14th or 15th century and is something that many people know, and so a lot of people will stack rocks around statues of Jizo to assist him in saving these children who died before their parents. Now in modern Japan, Jizo serves as a sort of patron saint of unborn children, children that were aborted or died in miscarriage, as well as those that died young. He also is a protector of expectant mothers, people caring for sick children, travelers, and those suffering in the sixth world. So, well, everyone basically, which explains his popularity. He's basically a bodhisattva and here to save absolutely everyone. But he is specifically associated with children and often travelers. And that's why you'll see statues of Jizo along the sides of roads in seemingly random places, as sometimes, having lost a child in a traffic accident, people will erect a statue of Jizo in the place where that accident happened. Why the red bibs and red hats that you see on so many of the statues? Well, in ancient Japan, red was actually seen as a color of protecting against sickness and evil and warding it off. And so that color came to naturally represent that. There's also numerous folktales, some specific to Iwate here, about people knitting little caps or bibs and things for the Jizo because they looked cold, and then receiving sort of rewards from these Jizo statues that spring to life. One other thing you might see about these Jizo statues is that in a temple or graveyard, there'll often be 6 of them, all lined up next to each other, sometimes identical, sometimes slightly different, with different hand positions or holding different objects. And these are because there are, strictly speaking, well, there are many, but there are at least 6 aspects that each are adapted to the Jizo responsible for one of those 6 worlds: hell, hungry ghosts, animals, jealous gods, humans, and heavens, as each one has an assignment to rescue sentient beings trapped in each respective world space. Jizo is often seen holding a big staff which has 6 rings attached to the staff, and each one of these rings also represents those 6 worlds. Of course, in modern Japan, Jizo has also become sort of a popular figure, and so you see lots of cute, almost cherubic images of him, and he's taken on many roles in popular culture that I won't get into here, but he is one of the most beloved figures both in traditional and in modern Japan. These sort of stories are so fascinating to me. I hope that you found this interesting as well. If you're curious where I'm filming this, this is the oldest graveyard, I believe, in Morioka, or at least the most famous one, and that is a home to the old samurai lords of the Nambu area, which encompasses most of modern-day Iwate. This place is in Morioka. It's near the Kitayama Tunnel and near one of my favorite shrines here. I'll put a Google link to this location in the description if you want to come and walk around this area for yourself. It's pretty beautiful. And these graves of the old Nambu samurai warlords that ruled here go back more than 500 years. Though there are some more modern ones here as well, of course. I'm really interested in all sorts of aspects of Japanese history, culture, both modern and traditional, and I hope this little explanation of Jizo has been interesting. Feel free to ask in the comments any other questions you might have. There may be some Buddhist scholars watching who'd answer in even greater detail than I can. At any rate, also feel free to suggest to me any other little topics like these Jizo statues that you see everywhere that you might want me to explore in a future video. I'd like to do more videos like this, and eventually, hoping that the pandemic comes to a close, I'll be able to do more things indoors and around traditional events like festivals, Japanese matsuri. Allow me to briefly plug that I have a Patreon, and so if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and want to get extra videos that I don't publish here about ruins and other sort of drone videos, please consider supporting me. I'm Quinlan on Instagram and GoNorthJ on Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the trails.